Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Podcana episode 71. This week, we're going to be breaking down the Las Vegas Disney Lorcana Challenge and Birmingham Disney Lorcana Challenge metagames and retrospectives, talking about what showed up, what did well, what converted, what didn't, and how we extrapolate this to the future metagames of Lorcana. This episode is going to be a bit different. So, Kawa and I are both pretty sick. I was just telling Carl I gotta change my my SOPs, my standard operating procedures. I touch too many things at these fucking events, and I always get this chest thing, and it sucks. um, and yeah, I have to drive to San Diego on Friday after packing. So, but yeah, we're going to do like a 10, 20 minute, not 10, 20, and blitz it and get as much information as possible and kind of break down our weekends. Moyen and Kawa both played. I casted in Vegas. So without further ado, where do you guys want to start? You want to start with metagame? You know the metagame that showed up on day one in Europe, in Birmingham, and in Vegas? Almost identical to the number. Not like, oh, this deck number one, this deck number two, this deck number three. No, I'm talking Ruby Sapphire.
416 to 410.
Yeah, 416 Wild. To 410. And then Amber Steel, second most played deck, 374 to 364. Ruby Amethyst, third most played deck, 346 to 247. That's probably the biggest differential. And then we had some different ones as we get down into the net, like 4 through 6 or 4 through 7, which are pretty much all operated by Emerald decks. The biggest swap between Europe and America is that the Americans, they have taste, they have respect. So Amber Amethyst was a bit lower in the metagame share, where in Europe, they just shoot that up. Europeans, they love their aggressive decks. Just kidding. I mean, we had tons of.
What do you mean? Emerald Steel is like so
bro.
much
Emerald Steel is not an
Vegas.
aggro deck. I don't know what stream matches you guys watched, but if you watched the list that Zan, Ed, all those people brought, it is not very aggressive. It is more like a prison deck, which I really hesitated to say on stream. I was like, I probably can't say that, but it would effectively set up like engines on the board via ward characters, and then it would just lock you out of the game. And then the way that deck works is that all of the cards kind of feed into each other. So you just snowball. It's like you jockey for a position in the first few turns, and then when you turn the corner, your opponent is hopelessly out of that game, barring game one of the finals with Zan, which was a bit of a different story. But for the most part, it's like, okay, first few turns, it's like, then I develop my engine, whether it's a Prince John, it's Muses, something like this, and then I start drawing cards. I make my opponent discard cards, so I'm limiting my opponent's ability to deploy onto the board, to come back into the game. But at the same time, I am also drawing more cards, and all the cards that I draw facilitate more discarding from my opponent, more removal, and more of these sort of dynamic threats, and more feeding more into my engine. So we would see these Emerald Steel games where it'd be like, okay, it's a game for like 5 minutes, and then it's just full on prison lock, and they're both at zero quest, and they just lock them out of the game. And then Zan at one point has more cards in hand than he has in deck. Like, it's just, it was so ridiculous, but definitely not an aggro deck in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's similar how the Amber Emerald deck is not an aggro deck either. Like it shares a lot of similarities to that in terms of you got the Prince John Muses engine. Obviously, the difference is you can bounce a card like Ariel to further find more songs, keep that discard engine going. Whereas the difference with the Green Steel deck is it's really, I think it's just so good when you have those removal pieces with like, the singer Ursula, combo with Stormray John. We saw, I'm pretty sure, right? We saw Zan run the morph in his list, which was pretty interesting.
Yeah, a lot of them ran the morph. Yeah, because that shift turn 3 beast to that shift Tinkerbell, which is very impactful. Mostly the shift turn 3 beast. Basically, there was like a few high rolly openings. In play versus draw, especially in the Emerald Steel Mirror, was actually less important than you think. It was, of course, the Diablo opening. So you open Diablo, you get to see their hand, you shift their Diablo, you get your song out of your hand, you potentially play something like an Ursula Deceiver, snag their song, and then you start to utilize this Diablo engine to not let them back into the game, or just start to pull ahead and card advantage. And then they would develop a secondary engine off the back of that with something like a Prince John in combination with the discard spells, or even like a shift turn 3 beast. Like, bro, what are you going to do about that? Well, you know, let the Stormray John my beast? Sure. It was pretty impressive to see. But I was particularly impressed because we had an interview with Zan, and he spoke about like, because it was a matchup where I thought play draw would be pretty important. And he spoke about the specifics of like what's more important than anything regarding play draw is just like these absolute BS openings where you just assemble a lock in like the first 3 turns of the game, and your opponent is just hopelessly kind of stuck out of the game. There's one thing I want to talk about though. My takeaway from the weekend, I don't know if you guys have the same takeaway from Europe in regards to metagame. Outside of Emerald Steel being this breakout deck, and I really liked the deck that they brought. I thought it was very innovative. The impact of Pete on the metagame and the play patterns of Lorcana was overwhelming. I felt Pete's presence. I feel like when I looked at every single deck from a deck building perspective, and I felt like it had a presence in every single game that Steel was represented.
I think from a deck building perspective, I think players definitely thought about it, because over in Europe at least we saw not the winning red-blue list, but we saw a lot of the red-blue players obviously cut down on the B preps, go up on the Sisus because of this Pete metagame, and even sneak in a cheeky 1 or 2 of Scar as well, which kind of act like this alternative B prep. So yeah, I think I think people were definitely prepared for a Pete meta, but at the same time, it's weird because like the deck that I was playing, Pete would kind of come down and would stop me doing kind of like, if I'm playing a discard deck, Pete stops the discard happening for a little bit. Pete is just like one of these crazy cards when it literally stops like pure removal. Like if it stops a big combo piece like a B prep or none of the C or something like that, that's when I feel Pete shines the most. But he's definitely had
really?
his that's what I felt so far.
Okay, so I actually thought it was particularly interesting in like these like tempo-esque scenarios. So obviously snagging the B prep on turn 7 when you've like over deployed onto board, that's like a very, that's the use case you expect for Pete. That's like the narrative everybody has. But one thing I kept seeing in these Emerald Steel mirrors, or just kind of Steel mirrors, particularly Emerald Steel, is like your opponent has like the best 3-drop they can have, right? They have Ursula Singer. Your turn 3, you play Pete, time lock them out of being able to sing their Ursula. Then on the following turn, you sing your own Strength of a Raging Fire or something like that. Or you play something like an Ursula Deceiver and snag the songs out of their hand. It was just so effective as this sort of tempo-oriented card that was kind of a read on the opponent's hand. Because previously in these Emerald Steel matchups, like deploying an Ursula Singer on turn 3 was like, okay, prepare to get my board wiped and for my opponent to get a bunch of value. But you actually had this kind of like interplay against that, which I thought was unique.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair assessment, to be honest. It's the same thing that when I think it's more impactful when it comes down against something like the Ursula Deceiver on the board. Against something like my deck, when it was like, if I'm on the play, I throw down the Prince John and then the Pete comes out in turn 3 to stop the You've Forgotten Me. Sometimes that can be detrimental, but oftentimes if there is just a Muses, or if there's an Aerial that wants to come down instead, that can be fine. But yeah, I mean, like I was going to say, we didn't really see, I don't think we saw many green steel mirror matches within this side of Europe. It definitely seemed like the deck was more popular in the States. But I can see how impactful that card is in that mirror match for sure. Moyen, what are your thoughts on the deck overall? Like, were you surprised to not see as much of this in Europe?
I mean, the difference isn't actually so big. It was 90 Emerald Steels in Europe, 108 in NA. So, and also aggro, the difference was like 16 players. So I think the only big difference in meta share was really NA liked red purple a bit more and like green purple a bit less. I think that those are the biggest differences. I think usually if Pete comes down, you can just kind of do something else that isn't as good as the action that you wanted to play, but also they just played a 3/3 that quests for 1. So in general, I don't think it's super impactful in these early turns. I guess but in this Emerald Steel deck, it has vastly improved that deck, because now you can just time, if maybe you can't get rid of the opposing answer to the Diablo, you just shift it on the turn where you play Pete, and then good luck answering it without playing an action.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what would happen a lot. And I mean, it would be in a lot of cases where the opponent's only way back in was something like an action, and maybe they only had like 2-3 cards in hand, and the Pete would come down, and then you would see some sort of sequence of discards on the following turn after that, and they would lose that action, they would lose that answer to Diablo. And yeah, I felt like the deck was ultimately Emerald Steel, at least the list that showed up and did well in Vegas, was this sort of this kind of like prison lockout deck that would eventually just snowball the game. There's almost nowhere for the opponent to come back. It had a pretty decent matchup into Ruby Sapphire as well. Not on the draw, but on the play, it seemed okay. I also, when we talked about the disparity of Emerald Steel in Birmingham versus Vegas, I wonder what kind of Emerald Steel showed up to Birmingham, if it was the same list, because the list that performed super well in Vegas was in the finals, mirror finals. There was 3 of them in the semifinals bracket. That was pretty much all the same list, like this morph, bit of differences on like Tinkerbells, bit of differences on Anna's, but I think there was also a lot of players that showed up to the tournament day one with a bit more of an antiquated version of Emerald Steel and ended up getting kind of destroyed by Ruby Sapphire.
Yeah, I mean, like an example I'll give is I remember in game 1 for Birmingham, it was Red Blue versus Green Steel on the feature match. Main reason I remember that, of course, is because Kim was on and she won 2-0 to start the day off, which is pretty cool. But she was playing against a very good player, Vincent. I didn't know him at the time, but I was informed that he was a very, very strong player. And the deck had similarities. It had, well, when I say similarities, I mean, it just had kind of the core green steel package, but it did have the muses. I didn't see any Johns, if I recall, but it did have a whole new world in it, which I assume there was 4 of them. Maybe there was just 2. So that was like a key difference in the deck. But I mean, yeah, I don't know if the morph shift line was there or not, but there's definitely some players that considered the deck, but I'm not too sure if many of them went with this exact deck building route, to be honest.
Yeah, I got the sense, and I know I talked to a few of these players as well, that there was like a collective of players that had kind of ended up on very, very similar lists. I don't know if that was like from a Discord or from an actual internal testing team, but they ended up on pretty similar lists. Let's hit y'all's tournament experience from like super quick, super high level. Just how did you do? Moyen, I know you were a little close this time.
A little close, yeah.
It's because no mustache, brother. That mustache, that would have been 1-2 points at least.
No, I know
Yeah, okay.
Moyen's going to start off talking, and I do think it's very important for him to mention some things that happened, but it's not. I mean, I actually think it is the main reason why Moyen didn't make the second day, and I'm sure you'll talk about Moyen, but there was a lot of collusion. Let's just say that, but I'll let Moyen take it from here.
Yeah, I mean, so I got 65th, but and obviously, if someone in front, like if any of the people in front of me that cheated didn't cheat, I make it in. So, but I don't want this discussion to be based on that. I think I've been very vocal about these things before me now getting 65th place. It's just, whenever I go about this discussion, this is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, at the end of the day, you're not getting stuff for free. You're getting stuff because someone else is missing out on it. And now, okay, this was the second event where 45 points was the bubble, with Bologna being the first one. And to me, it feels like the main reason for that is just that people collude more. And okay, so there's some very legal and okay ways to go into these playing best of ones, where you say, okay, if I lose game 1, I concede. If your opponent says the same, you are not allowed to ask them. You kind of have this like gentleman's agreement to play one game, and that's not what I'm talking about. That is completely accepted and within the rules currently. But now for example, in NA now we've had this. I think someone that won a Mickey that like cheated multiple times after he had warnings and then finally got DQ'd. And there's like a big discussion about that, but there's a bunch of people that got DQ'd for rolling dice when they actually played 1-1, or for playing a game 3 because they didn't want to report 1-1. And it's it's much more common. It's less egregious, but it's the same thing. It's also cheating. It's also a DQ-worthy offense. And at the end of the day, for example, I mean, on this, I didn't get confirmation on this, but on one of the rounds, I saw a table next to me when I finished, agreeing to play a game 3 instead of reporting 1-1. So I told the judge, And in the end, I see one of them in top cut. That's only possible if they 2-0'd. So I'm not quite sure what happened there. And that is quite annoying because they were in the same position as me, right? So if they report 1-1 already, that's one more position for me. And yeah, so I think that's just a big problem. And for everyone that does do these things, I would very much encourage to really think about whether it's the correct thing you do, whether that's something you want to be doing. And for everyone that already doesn't do this and accepts this is a wrong thing to do, that's against the rules, it's a DQ worthy offense, I would encourage you to take it a step further. And even if it kind of puts you in a position where you might not want to be in, I think if you see it happening, like, just report it, because otherwise people will get away with it far too often and it will always stay in the game. But I think as a community, if we want to do something about it, we have to report it if we see it.
That's the worst thing, though.
I have a hot take. Fuck the community. Fuck like doing it as a community. They should just institute a system that doesn't incentivize colluding. It's not that hard. Like Flesh and Blood does it, and it works fantastic. There's very, very niche scenarios where people collude in Flesh and Blood, but you create a system that incentivizes players to collude, and you can make it against the rules. But now you have to make it
against the rules.
That's what I'm saying. It is against the rules, but now you have to make them. You put them in the scenario. I think it's stupid. Like, why not just?
Okay, but
why not rework the tournament so that this is not a thing?
Okay, but I think this is kind of a cop out, right? There's a lot of systems where collusion is possible. I don't think you create. So what system are you proposing just to stop collusion? Because I think, for example, Best of 2 has lots of things going for it, or Round 2 format has lots of things going for it. And I don't think I want to give all of these things up just because people are colluding too much and no one's speaking up about it. Because I do think if we just report it when we see it, it's already going to be much less of a thing.
Yeah, but do you actually give me your 100% honest opinion. Do you actually think that that's going to happen in the current system? Do you actually think there's going to be this sort of, I don't know, like mental evolution or change, ideological change for basically anonymous players at this 2,000 player tournament that are playing for high stakes, and now they're presented a situation where they have to collude, which I know it's against the rules, I know it's DQ, but it's basically a free roll because it's very hard sometimes, if you're not stupid about it, to get caught. Like, I wish that they would just realize that is a problem and maybe try to institute a better system to where that is not the case. And Flesh and Blood has this like double loss thing for draws, but then the only time I've ever seen high level collusion was basically when you start getting to top 8s, which I guess could be kind of what's happening here, where it's like one person, if they can't get in no matter what, and the other person can, and they could lose.
I think in every system there's that type of collusion, or maybe there's the one where one is already secure top card, like in a different system, right? Let's say it's a best of 3.
Yeah, secure top.
There's no, and then one's secured and gets down paired against someone that needs the win. The one that needs the win offers some incentive for them to just lose the game. Like there's collusion in all of these systems.
Is the issue with the incentive though? Because like, I'm not even aware if it's against the rules. So like, say I am locked for top 8. I play against my teammate, and without any prompt from my teammate, without any push, any discussion, I'm just like, I would rather have my teammate up in top 8 rather than some random person. So I'm just going to lose this game.
I mean, that's also an issue. Even
if
they don't off.
Is that against the rules?
It's not against the rules to concede. I think it's very much against competitive integrity to let them in just because they're your teammate. But I mean, you're allowed to concede at all times. So I think technically that's not against the rules.
Yeah. So like that's the thing that I hate about this whole thing. Is it happened a lot in Flesh and Blood, is like what it comes down to is they start to institute these systems that, it becomes very, it's mostly around the wording, right? It's like how you phrase these things, competitive integrity aside, morality aside, I'm talking about the actual rules. So what happens in these systems is usually the experienced players end up being able to exploit it, while the ignorant players or the new players end up sort of not being aware of what the rules are, and they're the ones that end up getting in trouble, which may be like
That
good,
happened as
that's
well
their
this
problem.
weekend. Yeah, I heard a story of basically two people playing and they went 1-1 and they said to each other like, oh, like I think we should roll a dice to do it. So they both put their hand up to ask the judge could they do this, and the judge said pretty much like get out, like you're done.
It DQ'd them on that
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, on the question, they should probably, if they just ask that, they should probably just tell them no, that's not allowed.
Yeah,
It's not like they
DQing on the
caught them
question
doing
is odd.
anything.
Mhm.
That's kind of odd. But there's so many people that did get DQ'd for playing game threes or rolling dice, and I do think they will very much reconsider whether they want to do that again or try that again, because it just cost them the entire tournament run. And I think us as probably the biggest podcast in Lorcana, we have to talk about these things, and I do think I don't think we're suddenly going to make the problem non-existent, but I do think we can have a big impact on how big that issue is.
Do you think it's possible for them to create a better system that de-incentivizes collusion even farther, just from the structure, not from a rule standpoint, just from like a point structure system?
Not really. I mean, I guess so, because I think as long as we are in this 1-2 format, I do think there will be big incentives for this. But even in all the other formats, I think the incentive for collusion always exists. Maybe it's a little bit less common, but I don't think that we can just say, oh, it's just change the system and then no collusion will occur again.
And do you feel like, is your stance that, okay, so you're in the later stages of a tournament, maybe it's a different tournament, you're late stages of Swiss, you're locked for top cut, you pair against your teammate, you scoop them in, your opinion is that is 100% like a violation of competitive integrity and is morally wrong? And you think that's an objective opinion?
No, I think I mean, I guess it's my subjective opinion, but it's hard. I do think it's hard to argue against.
I don't want to argue. I don't want to interrupt you, but I would say, just because I feel like you're going to get to this point, the crux of the argument against this, aside from subjective morality, is that when you, and this is also subjective morality, when you do something like that, you're not actually just scooping your teammate in. You're actually denying someone who's playing the tournament via basically, you could argue, fair means. You're denying them their spot in the tournament. So you're playing this sort of meta tournament outside of the tournament, to which people that are not connected either via groups or friends or whatever are not privy to. So you get this advantage in a sense over people that is fundamentally unfair.
Yes, and so I mean, I've been playing physical TCGs for now a year, and I've stated multiple times to all of my friends, if we're ever facing and you need to win and I don't, we're playing the game. I don't care. And I if you want to get mad at me now. So we have this out of the way in case that ever happens. But just so they know my stance on it. Yeah, so I played Red Blue, and I played a list without the small CISO, which is I think the biggest thing about my list, which made my deck more consistent at being proactive. So because I wasn't including too many ice blocks or small CISOs, I was able to play more one jumps, how far it goes, and a lot of board clears. So my list was playing like 4 Brawl, 3 Medusa, and then 3 one jump, 3 how far go. And as the board clears, 1 Scar, 2 B prep, 4 big CISO. And that ended up working really well. I of course stayed at 60 cards. And I did feel like on some of I did make some risky calls for this specific tournament, where I felt like the quill opening is much less important than it used to be, because you don't really have to play quill on 3 all that much, because you just have like 90-ish% to find ramp on 2, and then still maybe like on your 5 ink turn, 6 ink turn, sometimes in the mid game it's still good to develop this quill. But in general, I think quill has gotten quite a bit worse. And I think so has Stein, because the Ruby Sapphire Mirror, first of all, they all just run out of cards, because they don't play Alphago, or play too little Alphago in my opinion, and play too many Smotsisu. And when they do run out of cards, if you can continue playing cards, you don't really need the time to finish. Second of all, if you do have any proactive plays, you would often rather do those than play down an early time in the mirror, because the norm is 2 item removal. So what I did was I was only playing 3 quill, I was only playing a single dime, and I was only playing a single item removal. And I just said, okay, against all the other matchups, I will have very efficient board wipes. I will have very efficient openings with the 7 2-cost ramp 3 Fargo, and I will be able to do lots of proactive plays with all the Talas and 4 vision and stuff. But on the flip side, I think the Ruby Sapphire matchup, I don't think it hurts that much to just play a single item removal. I think that's completely fine, especially with this consistent approach. I do think it hurt my red purple matchup, but that's something I was aware of, and I thought,
Yeah.
I think I can
You have
get
the
enough out of
Gastons as well, which look. I mean, that's for red purple, right?
Hmm?
The Gastons are for red. Oh, am I looking at an older list? Maybe.
Yeah, I'm this
Yeah,
not.
so
Sorry,
no
I'm not wasn't playing
Gastons
Gaston.
and-
I didn't add my list in here, but I can add it later. So I knew I was sacrificing some percentages against red purple, but on the flip side, I think I was improving lots of my other matchups. In the end, I think with my matchups, I probably make top cut a lot. I mean, with 45 points, I also make top cut a lot, but I ended up not facing a single red purple. So I had like 4 mirrors, 2 Ember Steel, one of them was very aggressive though, an Ember Emerald, and actually a Blurple. The Blurple one was the biggest roller coaster, because I thought, oh shit, now I finally face my first red purple, and then turn 2 they play a Tipo after they inked purple, played a purple card turn 1. I was like, oh, okay, it's a 2-0, and so it
Yeah.
was.
Tipo was honestly one of the best anti-aggro cards I saw all weekend when it came to like hyper aggro, like especially like the Amethyst Amber decks, like Tipo on 2, and then they go ahead and they try to play a bodyguard
Yeah,
in the form
and
of like Baloo,
all
and
that.
you just Sisu that, and
Yeah.
it's just Sisu or Brawl it, and then it's just like Tipo beats, man. Like Tipo just starts, it just wrecks all those 1-drops. It's actually hilarious. Really overperformed.
Yeah, so regarding the direction of the stack, so Din played an even more proactive deck. For some reason, he forgot that he put in too many cards, but still the rest of his approach was kind of interesting, where he didn't play any Mauis, and then he just like played 4 Develop, 4 Fargo, 4 Vision. So super proactive, and then instead of Mauis, he was playing just... he wasn't playing any big Sisu, and because of that, he didn't have to play Ice Blocks, and his approach was just, okay, I skip the mid game, go to 7 ink on turn 4 as often as possible, and then he was playing like 3 Scarf 4 B prep. I think that's an interesting take that can be explored more. And in general, I do think because of Emerald Steel performing so well, especially in Vegas, that kind of necessitates more copies of Medusa again. Right now it's like 2 to 3 copies. I think with the early Sad Beast line, maybe it's going back to like 3 to 4 copies again.
Yeah.
I think in general I was
as well.
Yeah, but I think in general I was happy with my choice. I was fortunate with my matchups. I got 2 Oat and 2 Mirrors. One of them in 3 of those 4 games I bricked, and one of them they just opened Chicha Quill, which I don't think is a good red-blue deck, but that's an extremely strong opener against like red-purple and red-blue if they do hit it. Then when they don't, they just lose. I played against one Chicha player, they didn't play Chicha on 2, and it seemed like it was unlosable because they like aren't playing Tala and Taufalgos for the later stages of the game. So there I could have probably won more, but in total I won 6 rounds, lost 2 and drew 1, 45 points, 65th place. I'm still quite happy with my performance.
Yeah. And Kyle, you played Emerald Amber?
Yeah, it just wasn't my day, honestly.
Yeah.
Start off
you happy playing it into that metagame?
Yeah. No, I think it was a good pick. It's funny, the few days before the tournament, I hopped on call with Alphos because he was interested in picking up the deck, and he had a very, very similar list to me. I think the only difference was he had 2 Annas instead of the You're Welcome, and I just kind of explained my thought process on the You're Welcome. I know it's not like the most fascinating card initially to look at, it doesn't look great, but he ended up swapping them in and he took it all the way to top 32. So I think it was a fine pick for the tournament. I think the worst matchups, I mean, I don't know, like I feel like against the matchups previously that I felt really bad into, like Amber Steel, I just knew exactly what I had to do to win those games. And most of the time, if I did face an Amber Steel during the event, it played out the exact same way that I practiced it, which was that if I was on the play, I won. If they were on the play, they won. There's a lot of ties against Amber Steel, which was fine. I'd rather take the tie in that matchup than the loss. And what just destroyed me was it's so disappointing because literally it was just my first game. I sit down, I'm against Red Purple, my most favored matchup. Both games I have the best opener I've ever seen of Diablo, Shift Diablo with Cove, Sing Bear Necessity, Snipe the Brawl, do the John, You've Forgotten Me, everything this deck needs to do. And my opponent answered both games with literally the perfect counter, which was just 1-drop whatever, Flynn, 3-drop Sisu, 3-drop Sisu, 3-drop Sisu. And at that stage, I had no muses on the board. I couldn't do Under the Sea. So sure, they had no hand, but they just went on board, and that's the game, right?
No removal. There's one thing I want to hit real quick because I just noticed, and we don't have the conversion data to day 2, or maybe we do, but we don't have performance conversion data for day 2 for Vegas, but we have it for Birmingham. One thing was consistent between the two. Amber Steel was the worst converting top 7 deck.
Well, I think this sheet I added was actually Vegas, not Birmingham.
Oh, it was.
Okay, because I was gonna say in Vegas it was definitely the worst converting deck of top 7.
So there was
by far. I bet Red Purple and Amber Steel performed very, very poorly in Vegas.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if it was the same in Birmingham, but it was really interesting because I felt like there was a narrative around Amber Steel going into the tournament, and it just drastically underperformed because Amber Steel is a deck that I think people can look at Ruby Sapphire as one of its bad matchups, and people knew that Ruby Sapphire might be one of the most played decks and would definitely be in top 3, and they brought Amber Steel despite that. So I would assume from there, I would extrapolate that they had a game plan for that, and they felt like the matchup was closer than it was. But Amber Steel overall, I don't know if it's also its power level to the rest of the field, just did quite poorly. And I thought this had the potential to be a tournament that was, in a way, dominated by Amber Steel. I thought it was a potential. That was part of the narrative going into it. But it turned out, what I thought was particularly interesting is in both Birmingham and Vegas, Ruby Sapphire, expected most played deck with a target on its back. People are attacking for it. Everybody's got the piece. Everybody's ready to play against it. It converted well despite. Despite that. I think that because of that, it gets tagged as best deck in the format. Maybe this Emerald Steel innovative build is, we can let that percolate a bit. But a deck
I agree.
A deck that everybody targets and is everybody ready to play, and it is one of the highest converting day 2 decks. Despite that, that's a fucking strong deck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Emerald Steel, maybe people can adapt to it well, maybe they can't. But with Ruby Sapphire, it's what matchups are you really afraid of? It's kind of Red Purple and Hyper Aggro. But while Ruby Sapphire was the most played deck, Ruby Amethyst still performed poorly. So, and Hyper Aggro actually, with the Vegas conversion rate, okay, 3 of them made it, of the 94. But because it was only 94 players that played it, conversion was actually alright. But I think in general, just the 2 decks that Ruby Sapphire could strike against, they're not really positioned super well in the meta. And because of that, it's kind of hard to actually target Ruby Sapphire. And with Amber Steel, I think its position in the meta was quite problematic going into the tournament when you thought, okay, the 2 most played decks, and this I also want to talk about, is we were thinking, first tournament in the new set. We don't have the first tournament where we didn't have Pixelborn to test out the set that the tournaments played in. So we were like, maybe the tournament meta is a little bit more up in the air. But even with just the bigger tournaments that were happening around the world and following all the discourse, I think it was quite possible, and we very much nailed the expected meta share where we said Ruby Sapphire, Amber Steel, the 2 most played decks. I wasn't quite sure in which order, but 22 and 20%, it doesn't really matter in which order. And then Ruby Amethyst 3rd played deck, and then a little bit drop off Green Purple 4th most played deck, and then the rest in a margin of 5 to 6%. All of those things were completely expected, and exactly the way we expected them. And Amber Steel, so basically you have 20% mirror and 22% a slightly unfavored matchup. Even if you think it's all right, I think you still agree it's slightly unfavored. So it's kind of hard to get the 2 O's you need to make top cut in this expected meta share. It's just lots of people thought the deck was so strong that it could overcome this expected meta, and at least as a whole, it really didn't.
Yeah, what do you think attributes to like the most to Amber Steel's sort of struggle in the metagame? Is there any like specific cards that have made it into the metagame that you think are making it a lot worse for Amber Steel right now, or like why it's not converting how players expect it to?
Yeah, so I guess, okay, so it struggles against Ruby Sapphire, everyone knows about, but I think what people underestimated was maybe its strength against Emerald decks, where, okay, Emerald decks aren't, you don't like love facing Ember Steel usually with the different Emerald decks, but all of them are actually kind of fine, just by the pure strength of Ursula Deceiver. Sometimes that just rips away their only Holy World, and suddenly their deck can stumble if they don't draw into the second one. So I think maybe people overestimated a little bit how good it was against all the different Ember decks. Even Ember Emerald is kind of okay against it.
Yeah, that's what I meant. That's what I said. Yeah, like it's. I mean, I'd expect like previously, I'd be like, okay, this is gonna be like a really, really tough. Right now, I think if you run that matchup, I'd expect a tie a lot of times, and sometimes even Amber Emerald can 2-0 for sure. Like especially because Amber Emerald has not only the Ursula but also the bare necessities to snipe even more songs as well, and the You Forgot Me to potentially get rid of their entire hand to the point where they're so reliant on literally just having a 5-cost singer and top decking like a whole new world or something like that, you know?
Yeah, and then there's this high prevalence of Pete in the metagame as well, which I think is a non-zero relevance. I mean, so one deck that also really impressed me, which I don't think we're particularly surprised by, but was Emerald Amethyst. Like it made it to the finals. It could have won Birmingham, I think, and then it also did pretty well in Vegas. I know it was a deck that we talked about, or mostly Moyen talked about in the lead up to the tournament, but I was particularly impressed, especially I mean, this deck against like other mid-range decks, which we've always known that. So Emerald Amethyst into opposing mid-range decks, particularly things like Ruby Sapphire, can be pretty nasty, especially things like Lyle Tiberius. Like that card is just
You mean
so good.
Ruby Amethyst, right?
Yeah, into
Not
Ruby
Ruby
Amethyst.
Sapphire.
Yeah, sorry, into Ruby Amethyst. Like Lyle Tiberius is just insane, and then actually like it's so good into like the more aggressive oriented decks as well. I just watched so many games where Lyle just absolutely took over the game, and it was just ridiculous. I felt like this list was very, very strong leading into the weekend. And yeah, so I mean, outside of that, is there anything else you guys want to mention in regards to the challenges? I know we said we're going to do 20 minutes, and let's do
there is some stuff I want to talk about quickly, just in relation to Birmingham, if that's okay. The one thing is, like, I know Moyen's spoken about it a lot, but I really do want to say that I'm sure there are a lot of great judges that were there at DLC Birmingham, but a lot of them, I think, I do not want. Oh my god, I don't want like an army of judges to come after me now. But
you're gonna get it, bro. That's a group, right? Like that is a tight group.
I just think that
I'll come for you.
The one thing I would love to see them do a little bit more is when it's at the stage of, you know, people potentially rolling dice or playing game threes, is to, I saw a lot of them kind of just standing at the side of the big rows of tables. Like they should be walking up and down and really trying to monitor that stuff. And I know it's a difficult thing to stop, and we've seen that they have kind of, you know, crunched down on it a little bit. But if that's the one thing, I think I'd love to see that being focused on a little bit more. The second thing is, oh my god, it was an absolute disaster day one of DLC Birmingham. I don't know if you heard about this, Brendan, but so the day's over, round 9 is done. Mate, this was actually like really bad, and a lot of people were really mad about it. We were standing, so they basically said, right, you know, if you by round 9, if you already had your 30 points, just come up to the prize wall, show you've got 30 points, and then we'll give you your prizes and you can walk away. If you were on, like, you know, 27 points or whatever, and your last game, you got over the 30-point threshold, you had to wait until round 9 updated, right, to actually claim your prize. We were waiting there for, oh my god, like, it had to be over an hour. It was ridiculous. And this is at like 8:30, 9 p.m. when everyone's tired, everyone wants to go get food, like just waiting, and then we just hear, so there's been an error, the system's crashed, come back tomorrow, and everyone starts freaking out because some people aren't there tomorrow, some people want to get their prizes. So then they say, right, okay, anyone that can't come tomorrow, send your friends pictures of your ID so they can pick up your prizes for you. And it was just an absolute shambles. Apparently, I heard that they tried to pair around 10 accidentally, and that's what the issue was, that, you know, the system crashed and all this type of stuff. But after a long day, a relatively successful, smooth day, it was pretty rough when everyone's tired. Everyone just wants to get some of the prizes, go get some food. It was not good.
Yeah, I personally saw the queue, immediately went for food, ordered the food, ate the food.
Did you come back and
Outside
was
of
still
the
a queue?
restaurant. I still didn't know if I made top cut because the standings were still not
Yeah,
out.
did you find out where did you find out that you got 65th, Moyen? Because we were in the restaurant. We were in the restaurant, and myself and Kim saw it, and we were like, "Oh, I don't know if I want to be the person to tell Moyen he got 65th. I don't know about that."
Right after the restaurant, I had like a 50-minute walk home, checked my phone,
Yeah.
65th place.
65th is kind of epic though. Like it's like so much worse than like 9th, because I feel like the margin is way bigger. So like it's like crazy to get 65th.
Also, no, I know everyone meant well, but on the next day when then everyone came to me saying sorry for me, to some extent it got a little bit annoying because I know it's unfortunate, right? I think I can deal with it all right. But if there's anything else you want to talk with me about, I would much rather talk about anything else than getting 65th place.
Let me bring you into the content creator beats. Wait till you actually do fucking shit at one of these. You're gonna have to play all 9 rounds. Then the entire day while you play those 9 rounds, and you maybe started out 0-2 or 0-3, people are gonna come up to you and they'll be like, "How's your tournament going?" And you have to tell them 0-3. And then they'll put the cherry on top and be like, "You? How? What happened?
What happened?"
And then you get to repeat that. You get to repeat that 100 times, and you just have to be like, "I'm ass."
Yeah. I should be on the pod. There was a conversation that Kim did so well starting off, and by the way, I do want to give her a shout out. Kim got 40 points, which was her best result so far, and a lot of people came up to Kim after seeing her win the first game. They were like, "Oh, how did you do? Glad it's going good," stuff like that. Like it was really cool to see a girl win the first round and do really, really well. And there was a running joke throughout the challenge. It was like, right, I'm in the bin. Let's kick me off the podcast and just replace me with Kim at this stage. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, so after 6 rounds, I knew I have like 6 games left in this next 3 rounds. I need to win 5 to be secure, or if I go 1-0-2, 2-2-0s, I'm in. And then in my 7th round, I play a red blue mirror, whereas one time I break the other game my opponent goes Teacher Quill and like completely destroys me. And I mean I can't blame them, but they kept apologizing because they were like a fan of the pod and they were winning and like, "Oh, sorry, I'm winning." I'm like, yeah, okay, just be happy you're winning.
Just take me out back, like old yellow me right now. Just fucking put me out of my misery.
About winning, I do want to win, so like, please stop apologizing. But I mean, in general, the support again.
Oh, it was overwhelming for me. Great. Yeah, it was. Yeah. I got mistaken for Moyen twice. That was the highlight of my weekend. They said, "Are you Moyen from Podcana?" And I was like, "Yes, I am. Yes, I am."
God forbid you could grow a mustache.
Oh yeah,
you'd be incognito.
I met some people from the States that flew over. It was also very nice meeting them. Like some great players that for some reason wanted to like try out Birmingham instead. I think one of them
Europe is soft.
Oh my god! I believe it's quite the opposite, Brendan. Let me just say that. Yeah.
I won't name who it was, but the reason for one of them was quite funny to me, where they said, my fiance doesn't allow me in Vegas anymore, so I had to play in Birmingham.
Really? Wow, that's crazy.
I mean, I don't know how much of that was a joke, but
I think it's 100% serious. That makes sense. Speaking of Vegas, they put us in this. They put us on the old Vegas strip. It's called Fremont Street. They put us in a hotel called the D, and then my hotel room was facing this street, like fucking loud, super loud, crazy. Every single night, I slept in my bathroom. Survival.
Why did you
Bro,
sleep
it was fucked. Like, yeah, I was like, I put down, like, I took off all the sheets off the beds, not even a mattress, and I slept on the tile. Banged my head on the toilet, waking up one time. Like, And it fucking sucked.
Oh my god, bro.
It was just
Also,
so
we've
loud, bro.
just on day 2, in Birmingham in UK, the pricing of the side events was a little outrageous because
Oh
they just
yeah.
said like same price, but instead of euros, it's in pounds, which is just more. But we've had a great time. We spent like 6 or 7 hours straight, where we shuffled our decks together and like made boosters out of these meshes and drafted from these boosters. And that was
That was
one
the
of
most fun I
most
had all
fun.
weekend. Yeah, we basically like drafted with like 4 competitive decks. And
Yeah.
the funniest thing was because they were all different colored sleeves. When we were like drawing from our decks, we were like, "Oh shit, this is a blurple card. No, I need a B prep. It has to be this color sleeve." It was so much fun. It was so sick.
Yeah, I was talking with someone on the weekend. I think that you could create a Lorcana cube where you could do 2 or 3 color limitation. There's not a lot of cards in Lorcana, so it'd be a little bit tough. But I think like having a color limitation would make the game a lot easier. Or it's like you have 2 colors and then you can splash color 3, and if you do all cards in color 3, cost 2 more or something like that, or all off color cards cost 2 more.
Or just all colors. Bing bang.
Bang bang.
Bang bang.
Bang bang. I don't
Makes
like all
for
color
some-
stuff
for some
because it's
very
just,
broken decks.
yeah. You just
I
draft
have to say, Brendan, when I looked at the top 64 for Vegas, I saw some sneaky ass decks made it in there, and I was like, God, if NA
Steel Ruby, baby.
if NA lets one of these decks win the challenge, I will freak out, bro. I was expecting, right, okay, yeah, Birmingham's, let's see what wins NA. It's Steel Ruby, bro.
I mean, I
Hot
have
deck.
also I haven't had this confirmed, but I've heard that there was someone that made top cut for the second. So they made it twice already, and they made it again. And both times they played 72 cards.
Yeah, it's actually
72?
funny you say that. Yeah, it's funny you say that because in both tournaments that happened, I believe the other one was Atlanta, I had about, I don't know, 95 people come up to me and be like, have you heard there's a 72 card deck in day 2? And I'm like, fuck. They love that. Like I'm just dude, I am like the fucking beacon of, hey, there's a over 60 card deck. Egregiously over 60
I think
card
that's
deck in
this
day 2.
podcast now. Anytime I saw it as well. I mean, I literally before this episode, right? Let's grab the decks. That's a 62. That's a 61. I want to kill myself. Yep, that made it. Yep. Honestly,
Yeah. So a lot of 61s for sure. I was dealing with that. I guess the last thing, I watched a little bit of EU coverage. Thought the EU coverage is pretty good, dude. It's very high production quality. It's wild. The multi-camera angle.
you think
like,
comparative
the
to
gameplay
NA,
looks
it
so
was
good.
like way better?
I think the production quality is way better. I think that the strategy is way worse. So I think that doing true live, is ass. I don't think that you should. If you do a TCG, I don't think you should be running true live. I think you should be running off cadence, so and just have only gameplay. No B-roll, no vamping, just gameplay, max gameplay, like all the time. I think that that is just objectively better. Magic does it, Flesh and Blood does it, NA does it, and I think that is just the way to go. But other than that, EU just looks beautiful. It looks like a freaking Pokemon thing.
I personally don't understand why it's done, but like I was watching the NA coverage, and ever since you put that in my mind, Brendan, I literally see like the people go like run like because it's all like 0.25 speed, right? So I can see that shit so much. Like I see Zach shuffling his deck going like
Bro, don't say that. They think they're getting away with that, bro.
mate.
They don't think anybody
They don't think
notices
people
that.
notice that? What? Kim even said it to me. She's like, "Why are they moving so strange?" And I was
Bro,
like,
it's way better, dude. It's way better than like some of these people just tank forever on like nothing. So it's better than that. But yeah, I think that not going true live is just so optimal. Like it's just straight gameplay for like 10 hours, which is sick.
Mhm.
What else about NA? Was there anything NA production? I don't know. I was
we got you
obviously
back on the
doing-
desk. That was the biggest thing, bro. Everyone was hyped to see you back.
Yeah, I was on the desk. Hitting
Yeah.
I slowed down on the hypergeometric calculations.
Actually responded to their questions now instead of talking about chess and hypergeometric math.
God forbid they ask me one of those questions. I'd be like, thought you never ask. There was this one thing. So we're not supposed to give out specifics of deck lists day one. And then they like said it into my ear one time, and it was just like gibberish. I didn't understand it. So then for like 5 rounds, I was like, yeah, so they have exactly 4 of this card, 3 of this card, 1 of that. They got 52 characters.
No.
Does Daisy die?
Well, I
Yeah.
guess it's weird, right? Because for you guys, like you said, if it's run at the separate, I mean, you still shouldn't do it, right? Because even if it's run, 2 hours ahead or whatever, if someone happens to catch that match and then they play against the person, then they have an
Yes.
advantage. But that's why,
It's definitely not
in
ideal.
in EU is the same thing of like, they had the clear, like it's clear they have the deck list in front of them, but they can't say, oh, there's a one-off scar here. Oh, there's this, there's that.
Yeah, at the end I did a triple. I did 2 semis games or something like that, and then I did the finals.
Oh
I
yeah.
think it was like 2 hours plus. Yeah, the finals was it was a long one, but I think very good match. Very good match. Very atypical Lorcana. If you don't know what the bag is in Lorcana, go watch the finals in Vegas.
That
Jesus
explains
Christ!
the back. Yeah, I watched it.
Oh my god!
Where like the major thing was like when you after opponent discards to first trigger the muses to bounce the Diablo and then trigger your own Prince John to actually draw the cards
Yeah,
off the
to
discard.
trigger the draw.
Oh wow, that's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, but it wasn't like one time that came up. It was like the entire game was
Yeah.
like these bag sequences.
Yeah, was there
Remember
like
Zan had to
like-
like take
yeah.
a break after it.
Oh really? Yeah. Was there like Bruno sequences as well? It's like that goes back to
Yeah,
the
yeah.
hand, it shuffles,
Oh, yeah.
and then the muses bounce or something and stuff like that. Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh
Mhm.
yeah, it was a bunch of that. Closing thoughts on the Lorcana challenges. Do you guys have any more in Europe?
No.
Bro, that's
No.
just
I'm coming
rude.
over for Seattle.
That's actually just rude, bro. I wish
I'm
we
just
had
like
more.
fucking inferior region. That's what I'm saying, bro. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, but at least one player on the podcast got locked for Nats. That's good. That's a dub.
It's the
Yeah,
player
and
we.
also
I think it's the player we all expected as well, which is good, right? Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
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 I saw someone made a poll on who would win Worlds, and I'm glad you defended Mikri.
Of course, bro. Yeah. They said, "Oh, what's the poll?" Well, first of all, they put 3 people from NA and 1 person from EU. I was like, "What's this bullshit?" NA superiority, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, and results-wise, I guess they all have better results and more results than me, but I do not care. In my head, I'm the favorite.
Yeah.
That's
But,
what I did.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say is before we finish up, even though there are no other challenges, I'll give a shout out. I don't know if you heard, Brendan, but I finally got a good Lorcana casting gig. Finally happened after months. There's going to be a 1,500 player event in Paris next month in October. So it's basically the size of a challenge, but it's an unofficial Lorcana event. So if you guys want to check it out, it's called Lorca Quest. I think you can still buy tickets for it, but it's going to be myself, Spessy, and Kim. We're going to be casting that event in English. It's going to be a lot of fun. First prize takes like a case of every set, which is pretty nice.
Bro.
So
That is crazy that Lorcana can sell out a third party. I don't know if it's sold out.
Oh, no,
But
it's sold
you
out,
can put
yeah.
over 1,000 players into a third party tournament. Like Flesh and Blood can't even do that for their main tournaments. They can't even get like fucking few. They get like 500, 600 max.
Only Worlds because everyone can qualify.
Yeah. The world's actually pretty small, but like the callings, like the big ones.
Mm.
Yeah, Lorcana's freaking popping off. There was a bunch of. Actually, I don't know if I'm supposed to say that. There were some interesting people at Vegas. I'll say that around Lorcana. I got to talk to a lot of people, by the way. And,
a lot of the team was there
Vegas.
though, right? Like you got to meet. Did you meet like Ryan and Steve and stuff
Yeah.
like that? Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome.
I talked to Steve for like 30 minutes
Oh, awesome.
about. Yeah, we were talking specifically how bad Altered it. No, I'm kidding.
Also, there's one last thing that I actually realized in this tournament only that has it's like a kind of a non-issue, but I still think it's like an issue that has existed before, but I just never knew. And because this was the first time I wasn't in or out, I was on the bubble. I looked at how do they actually calculate the tiebreakers.
Oh yeah.
And it makes 0 sense how they calculate them. It doesn't actually change. It doesn't actually change it. But okay, so the way they calculate them is so first tiebreaker is how many points actually how many games did you win? But I think with 9 rounds, you basically always have the same amount of games won if you have the same amount of points as someone else.
Yeah.
But with more rounds, it would be possible that would be a tiebreaker. Okay, so then the next tiebreaker is opponents like share of their maximum match points, which I think that works. But the way they calculate it is you add up all the points from all of your opponents, you divide that by the number of your opponents, and then you also divide that by the number of the max points each of your opponents could have gotten, depending on how many rounds that they played. Which meant that I and everyone around me had like 5 or 6% of this random tiebreaker. If you just didn't divide it through the amount of opponents that you had played against, so if you just didn't divide it through 9, it would all be like in this 50-ish% ratio or field, where it would actually be an intuitive number of, okay, on average, my opponents got like half of the points that they could have scored. Instead of dividing it through the amount of players, which is, it doesn't change anything about how the tiebreakers would work. It just makes the number look less intuitive, and it makes no sense.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to rant about
So
this.
Moy is saying if there's
Final
anyone from
tiebreaker should be height.
height, yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay.
Fuck.
Thanks for being
Also,
so
bro,
serious.
I saw some of that, bro, on Twitter, Brendan, when people were saying, "Oh, Brendan's the short guy." Bro, there's a picture of Brendan. He was like, you were like the tallest there, bro. You were the tallest out of everyone.
Nah.
It was photoshopped, was it?
They give me
Yeah.
little booster things because I tell them that makes me
Little stool, yeah.
I'm a little self-conscious. Did you guys see any Podcana t-shirts in the wild?
Well, no, because they were too expensive for Europeans to buy, so they're
dude.
probably
But
on the
we've
States.
had people ask for the shirts, but we just
Yeah.
had to say we don't have any.
I've just seen them straight up in the wild.
Hell yeah.
All right, I just want to thank everybody for staying tuned for this 20-minute podcast. We do. I do want to request that Podcana support it goes down. I would like less Podcana support because I'd like to come away from these events not sick every time.
Oh my god.
Just too many nice
Too many nice
too much
people
support.
supporting what we do. Am I right? Yeah.
We gotta get rid of that.
What a shame.
Yeah, 20-minute podcast wrapped. Quick metagame talk. Anyway, if you enjoy this
Oh, yeah.
podcast, I'm what?
Just before we close off, because these two folks are sick, we aren't doing the spilled ink this time, so maybe we'll carry over some of the questions
We
for
will.
next week.
For sure.
Yeah, 1000%. We also got a bunch in Discord we gotta add in there. So we did the math on people bringing bad decks.
Bad decks, yeah.
Anyway, you enjoy this podcast, something you can do is leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Video version of this on YouTube at youtube.com/@Podcana podcast. Hit that subscribe while you're there. Brendan APG, Moyen_CG, Kawatek_CG. Those are the Twitters. Thank you all so much for listening. We'll see you next time.